Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames. And this is
A Little Bit Culty.
Cults are commonplace now. From fandoms to fads, we're examining them all. We look at what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real culty stories told directly by the people who lived through them, because we want you to learn a few things that we've had to learn the hard way.
For example, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you might be prime recruitment material, and who knows, you could already be in a cult. If you're not aware of your programming, you're probably being programmed, so keep listening to find out.
We'll talk about all sorts of topics on the show, but be aware, this podcast might contain stories that could be alarming to some of our listeners, so please check our show notes for more detailed descriptions and take care of yourself.
Subscribe to our Patreon for Thursday bonus episodes, Q&A, and all sorts of exclusive content. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 7 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to my love.
Welcome back to A Little Bit Culty, everyone.
In some ways, the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God is your typical fire and brimstone megachurch. They believe Jesus is returning any minute now, and the only path to salvation is through his teachings. Oh, and through giving them money. Lots and lots of money.
I've never heard that before.
I know, it's totally unique.
Jeez,
A totally unique structure.
I wonder how this one turns out. And the UCKG doesn't just expect your standard 10% tithe. Twice a year, they hold fundraisers called Campaigns of Israel, where they basically demand followers donate everything they have. Seriously, everything. Members are expected to empty their bank accounts and sell their worldly possessions for the church.
They also preach about demons and damnation. They believe mental health issues and homosexuality are caused by literal evil spirits, and that they can only be banished through something called strong prayer. Translation, exorcism.
Head-spinning exorcism, Sarah?
I never saw that movie. Too scary.
It messed me up for years. The UCKG has a reputation for targeting youth in vulnerable communities. Like most cults, they use love bombing to recruit and coercive control to keep members in line.
Our guest today is Rachael Rain, a survivor and advocate who joined the UCKG in Britain when she was just 13. She's here to share her first-hand experience as a teenager in the church and how it led to her founding her advocacy movement.
We'll get into the culty methods the church uses to manipulate young people and what the healing process was like for Rachael after she escaped. And since she's a law student, she'll tell us about flaws in the British legal system when it comes to coercive control.
It's heartbreaking what Rachael went through, but her story is inspiring. Let's welcome her to the show from the other side of the pond.
Make it rain. Dad joke.
Rachael Rain, welcome to A Little Bit Culty.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
We are too.
I like the name Rachael Rain.
Oh, thank you.
I do too.
Yeah.
You really need to be like a pop star or a cult advocate also is good, but you definitely have a famous sounding name.
You can work with that a lot, too.
Oh, thank you. I had to think of something different because in the cult, I gained a whole other name.
Oh.
So yeah, in order to kind of reclaim my identity, I had to make something up. And yeah, I thought that's the most mature way. Oh, not mature, awesome. That was the most awesome way for sure. So I thought Rachael Rain, why not? It has a nice ring to it.
I love it.
Thank you.
And also rain has a kind of, it has a lot of biblical reference too, right? To reign over.
I was going more regal.
Okay,
I was
regal.
looking more like a regal point of view.
Yeah, okay. I like that.
Reign, she reigns over stuff. Yeah.
Yes, let's get into it. You've had quite a journey. Tell us about who you were when you were 13 years old and how did you hear about this organization? Bring us on the journey.
Sure. So when I was 13 years old, of course, right, buckle up because it's going to be a bumpy ride, but I'm sure you're used to it. This ain't your first rodeo. So when I was 13 years old, I was pretty much two different people. I was the person I was before I joined, and I was the person I became after joining. So in terms of my background, I never had a particular religious upbringing. You know, if you was to ask me, I would say I'm a Christian, but I never attended church regularly. You know, I wasn't devout in any sense of the word. But one Sunday, I mean, I come from West Croydon. It's a difficult area in South London. And I used to pass this church every single day, and I had no idea that it was even a church. But one particular Sunday, I was just going about my business as normal, and another young person reached out and they invited me to come to an event they was having that day. So for some reason, I took them up on the offer. It was literally like right around the corner from my house. So I thought, okay, there's a youth group here? Like what? So I went, and sure enough, there was a youth group event going on. There was singing, dancing. It was very lively. And I thought, okay, this seems all right. At that point, I didn't come from like a really tumultuous upbringing. I didn't have any major issues. You know, I was fairly regular and fairly normal. But I suppose, like a lot of people who's when they're 13, they're just on a journey, you know, trying to find themselves, trying to experience life, just to see what's out there. And that was pretty much where I was. So when I went to that first event, they wasted no time on saying, you should come back for another event we're having on next Thursday. Then I went on that Thursday, and then it was, oh, you should come on Wednesday. Oh, you should come on Monday. You should come on Saturday. And literally within a few weeks, I was attending every single day after school, different services that they had going on, but also activities they would have going on after school. So it took me from the age of 13, it took me literally, I would say, a good 2 months for me to like fully become a born again Christian, if you were. So that change was very, very drastic.
And what was it that they were offering that was compelling to you? So you said it was lively and it was near your house, it was convenient, but like, what was it that you were like, yes, I'm going to do this? What is the this that you were signing up for?
This was the sense of community. I was bored. I didn't have anything else going on, didn't have sports team or anything going on outside of school. So I suppose I was a victim of my own boredom, if you will. And they were offering a family, a community, this uncharted territory. And as a really curious, quite bored 13-year-old, that looked really interesting, especially since it was a new world for me. You know, I wasn't against religion or against anything like that. I simply never was involved in that world. So they were offering me something new, something shiny. So when you dangle something new and shiny in front of a bored 13-year-old, guess what? They're going to bite. And boy, did I bite. I bit good. Like I was so sold.
Were your parents there? What were your guardian? What was your home life like? Did they approve?
So my mom, at first, like most parents who have kids who are involved in church cults, there's no immediate red flags there. Especially since what I was coming from in my background, it was like for my mom, well, at least she's not in a gang, at least she's not sleeping around, she's going church now. Okay, go ahead. There was absolutely no red flags at first because it's a church, it's a youth group. And not only that, it's not a little shack in the corner of some high street. It's literally a registered charity here in the UK. So that adds another element of legitimacy. So to a certain degree, my mom had faith in this place. She had trust. She trusted them to be a decent church that was helping and guiding me. That's the kind of deception that a lot of parents unfortunately fall for, especially when we're talking about a church cult specifically. You think, what could go wrong? It's church. It's great. That means they're going to stay out of trouble. That means they're going to be focused. Great. My mom had no idea of the things that started to unfold. And when she did kind of start to catch on, by that point, it was a bit too late because I weren't trying to hear any of it. So yeah, at first, to answer your question, my mom was supportive of the fact, you know, that I was now going to church and was now a born again Christian.
And tell us about those beliefs that you were embracing fully as a born-again Christian? Like, what did the UCKG believe, and what was appealing about it?
Well, the UCKG believes in a lot of things. They claim to be a Bible following church. So everything they do, they claim that it comes directly from the word of God. But in reality, it's a lot more sinister and it's a lot more remixed. Like, for example, the UCKG believes that in order, and actually this isn't unique to them, they believe that the more money you give to the church, the more blessed you'll be.
Yeah.
That's convenient.
Because that's like the whole thing of prosperity preaching. I mean, isn't it convenient? So that is a big part of their spiel. They teach, even from young, because remember, I joined when I was 13 years old. And I remember I was 13 when I started to become what they call a faithful tither. And that's something of the ideology that they get you involved with fairly soon. Because when you think about it, it's evilly genius, because they know that if they get kids with this ideology and they drum into kids and students that you have to give 10% of your income to the church, they know that kids get pocket money. They know that when you go to university, you get your student loan. They know that young people have money trickling in. So for them, it's passive income. Even though it's not as big as, a paycheck maybe, they still have that money flowing. And then when you get an older person, they love that too, because, the older people have pensions. So they really are targeting a dynamic range of demographics in order to get that money coming in. But of course, you don't see that at the time. So when I was 13, I was told that, of course, open your Bible in the book of Malachi, as they all do. And the verse was that you have to give 10% of your income to the church. Bring the first 10% into the tithe house. Bring the first 10% into the storehouse so that your house will be blessed. Something like that. I think the trauma made me kind of forget that verse, because there was a time when I knew it fluently, okay? Like the back of my hand. They loved that verse. God.
Congratulations. I think that means you're healing, so don't worry.
It's been about 10 years, but we're still healing.
Do you think the church started that way, or do you think it morphed into that?
Do you know what? I think, like most cult leaders, it starts with them trying to be revolutionary, trying to do something different because they feel they can do things bigger and better than everyone else. And then I think money got involved. In my cult's kind of stance, it was literally a villain story. He is like the ultimate villain from a Marvel movie. Like, literally, his origin was that he started off in the world with special needs. And because of those deformities he had on his hands, he basically wasn't allowed to preach in his church. So they kind of kept him on the sidelines. And he was like, but I want to preach. I want to be a pastor. And they're like, no, sit down, shut up. And this was in Brazil in the 70s. And this is well documented because, like the amazing cult leader he is, he has 2 movies that's on Netflix currently. He has 2 books detailing his amazing kind of journey to who he is today. So this is well documented. So when he was kind of like put to the side and was like the runt of the litter, as it were, he said, I'm going to start my own church. And that's what he did. And in his mind, he was going to make the biggest church, the most powerful church. He was going to have the most members. He was basically going to compensate for all the times where he felt rejected and marginalized. And that's what he did. He started preaching, he had a following, and then the following grew, and then he started to get more confident, and then, the money started coming in. And I think it was a thing where money definitely took over, and he may not even acknowledge it up until this day what he's doing is wrong, because I feel like money can take over and be like a disease sometimes. I mean, now the lines are so blurred, he probably doesn't know where it started and stopped, because in his mind, he probably believes that he's definitely like this man of God who's changing things. But of course, he's not blameless. I don't feel that he's a victim in this, because he knows what he's doing is wrong. Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much how that started. And that's why, and to date, the UCKG is the largest Pentecostal church in the world. Edia Macedo is the wealthiest bishop in the world. And this is what annoys me, because whenever you do, like, there's lots of posts going around, the wealthiest pastors in the world. And then you see the big guys, like in America, there's a few. You guys have a few. You guys have a whole bunch of these wealthy pastors, and there's some in Africa, of course, but they are talking about millions. And it upsets me because Edia Macedo was at one point, and this was literally about 2 years ago, Forbes deemed him to be worth 2.2 billion. Okay, so he's a billionaire, and that's crazy because personally, I don't believe that a so-called ordained man of God who is there to like serve should have millions when there's people going hungry, especially their own church members. But there you go. But for them to be billionaires, for me, that's just crazy. Especially since he doesn't do much with those millions in terms of like bettering his community in Brazil, and he really doesn't do that much with it. But he seems to be benefiting.
Yeah. Did you ever meet him?
I've never met. No, he wouldn't meet common folk like
You're
us.
too,
What?
you're a little
No,
person.
no. That would be like touching. Of course. I mean, even now when he visits, because he does visit in his jet and he has five, last I checked. He flies in, he holds the service. He may have a meeting with the pastors to grill them on why they're not hitting targets and, kind of like relight that fire. But he never stays back to talk to the common folk. Oh, no, that's not his bag. He has no time for that.
So tell us about the Victory Youth Group. How do they recruit and manipulate young people?
Ooh, where do I begin? So, the Victory Youth Group is the UCKG's youth ministry. And it's the biggest ministry they have. They have different groups that target different people. Like literally every demographic you can think of, they have a group to target them. But they really, really like push the youth group because from that youth group, they are bringing up future pastors' wives, future assistants. These are the future leaders of the church. So they try and get you from young because the UCKG absolutely never brings in older people to be pastors. Never. It doesn't happen. They want you from young. They want you groomed. They want you fully under their spell by the time you even get to the pulpit. So the youth group, and I was a member for, those whole 7 years when I was in the church. And I rose the ranks really quickly. And I can say it is absolutely a grooming ring. Just as I came in when I was 13, by the time I was 15, I was made to groom new people to basically fill the spaces that I surpassed. So it's literally a grooming ring. You get in, you get groomed, you get abused, and then you're expected to go ahead and bring more people in and do the exact same thing. It's a vicious cycle that I see up until today, and it's just really grotesque. So, in terms of the meat and potatoes of the Victory Youth Group, they have 2 meetings a week, and one meeting is meant to be more lively, and that's on a Sunday. And then they have more of a serious meeting during the week. And with these meetings, there's like subgroups within the youth group. And in all of those subgroups, they have leaders, frontliners. So it's all about hierarchy, like so many cults, right? So they give you a position, and if you do wrong, they take it away. So that's big in the UCKG. So I joined when I was 13. By the time I was 14, I was ready, made a youth leader. And that meant that I now had to go and like have my own subgroup in the church. And it was my job to basically call all of my members of the group to make sure that they attended services, to make sure that they was doing these stupid challenges they had us do. I basically had to like groom the subgroup within the youth group. And it was just horrific.
Is it fair to say that that is the workforce? The youth is the workforce for the church, and that's what you're groomed for?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Free labor.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, those are the cleaners of the church. It's free labor and child labor. Because I was so young. I was 13 when I started doing all of these things. They make the youth members clean the church from top to bottom. They never hire cleaners. Absolutely not. Even though they make millions every year, they never can afford to hire cleaners. What, when the youth group's there? No. So from a young age, I was cleaning the church. They have like sweatshops in which you have to stamp and fold newspapers by hand, pack the newspapers, and there'll be like, 100 in a bag or 200 in a bag. And you would be expected to go and post them through people's letterboxes. You was expected to take those papers out and evangelize. That's another big part of the youth group. They call it evangelism. But really, it's recruitment. Because if we were evangelizing, then we would be telling people about the gospel, right? Telling people about Jesus and whatnot. That's not what we did. In fact, we were actually told not to mention God when we were evangelizing. I mean, how crazy is that?
Wow.
They would literally tell us not to mention God because they did not want to put people off. So we had to deceive the public.
So how did you recruit them?
Oh, good question. We had to say that we are a youth group. We're a community group. We help young people get out of gangs. That's what we had to say. We literally had to avoid the word God altogether. And looking back, that's just so gross. I mean, it's so deceptive because that's how they got me. Off the jump, they didn't tell me it was a church. I mean, I wouldn't have been put off personally, but they know that a lot of young people might not be in a rush to join a church, but they may be inclined to join a football group or a dance group, which they have now.
Right.
You know, so they have all of these things to try and attract vulnerable kids who are looking for something.
Shame on them.
Well, they also steal your youth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what youth? I have no youth. My whole youth was spent in the UCKG. I wasn't able to go to my prom to the point where when I was 15, I became senior within the church. So I became an assistant. So the thought of going to prom was like completely out of that. I might as well have said, can I go to a rave? It was so outlandish for me to go to a prom. I was doing my finals. I think you guys call it finals. You know when you finish off high school
Yep.
and you do your final
You
exam.
call them O-levels. O-levels, right?
Yeah, we call them GCSEs, O-levels. Yeah, the name changed over the years. But back in my days, it was the GCSEs. And thinking about that timeline makes my skin crawl because I was 15 years old. I was meant to be like really studying, making sure I get good grades so that I pass my GCSEs. But my education was on the back burner. Like I don't even know how I set the GCSEs. Like how did I even take the exam? Because my whole life was the church. Every day after school, church, church, church. Not once do I recall a pastor saying, oh, you know, you have to take time to study. Don't come church this week. You have exams next week. Never. Never, 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 never. It was just so gross. It really was.
Now, at the time, though, you didn't think it was gross yet. Like you hadn't figured it out.
This podcast wouldn't exist without our fantastic, supportive, generous patrons. Come find us over on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty. Go there for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. Subscribe now and join us. That's patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support our podcast. Life moves quickly, and sometimes you just need to relax, recharge, or refocus without overcomplicating things. Even though we're on summer break, there's a lot to wrangle, book deadlines, podcast deadlines, and the kids' summer camp schedule that changes week to week. That's where Via comes in. We've both been trying their products for over a year now, and we love them. Whether it's for better sleep, boosting mood, calming anxiety, enjoying the forest, or just a little bit more, or just feeling more grounded, Via delivers. They've got gummies, drops, a range of options from zero to high cannabinoids so you can totally tailor your experience. Everything's organic, lab-tested, made in the U.S., and shipped discreetly right to your door. Not sure what to get? Their product finder quiz takes under a minute and gives personalized recs. If you're 21 or over, head to viahemp.com and use the code CULTY to receive 15% off, free shipping on orders over $100. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code CULTY to checkout. That's VIIAHemp.com and use code CULTY at checkout. After your purchase, they'll ask where you heard of them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Let's be real. Work stress is everywhere right now. According to the data, 61% of the global workforce is dealing with higher than normal stress levels. That's not surprising, but it is a problem. And most of us can't just peace out and go off the grid, even if we want to. What we can do is take small steps, things that actually help. For me, that means moving my body, getting outside, and yes, therapy. I've found therapy super helpful in my own life. It's helped me make better decisions, manage stress, and understand myself on a deeper level. And I've seen what a game changer it's been for people I care about as well. That's why I think services like BetterHelp matter. It's the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 5 million people served. You can do sessions from your phone, your laptop, wherever. And if it's not a good fit, you can switch therapists anytime. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/culty. That's betterhelp.com/culty.
You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to a little bit culty, shall we? There was a time, obviously, that it was good for you until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Those good days can you just paint me a picture of what that would have looked like so we can contrast it to when you started to see the red flags?
Of course. So good days in the UCKG would be the days when I was just allowed to be a kid and joke with my friends at the time. I remember there would be times on a Sunday because we would spend our whole weekends in the church. We would see church more than we saw our own home or families. So I remember one time I had a best friend in the church, and my background is Jamaican and she was Jamaican as well. So there'll be times we'll be talking and stirring up conversation, just having fun, joking. Those times were so precious because for a moment, I'm not just Assistant Rachel, because in the church, I had to assume a whole other identity. And although I was a 15-year-old child, I had to be Assistant Rachel. Whenever anyone would address me, it would have to be Assistant Rachel, Miss Rachel. So for those brief times where I'm able to just be a kid and laugh and talk about things, that really helped. It made me for a minute forget all about that and just be a kid. And looking back, those were the times that I think kind of got me through. And also, funny enough, when I think about the best times I had in there, was actually with people who since left. Like, I remember the pastors who really made a difference, the youth pastors specifically, because the youth pastors would have been groomed from a young age to be youth pastors in the UCKG. So I remember there would be occasions where there would be youth pastors, and you can kind of tell at the time we didn't have the language, we didn't have the knowledge, but looking back, they were quiet quitting. They were on their way out. They didn't care about hitting their targets anymore. They weren't fussed if you missed service, they were just chill. And they also would share in those times where they were just able to be a youth and joke with us and laugh with us because we were just under the youth pastor. And I was just under the youth pastor in terms of hierarchy. There'll be a lot of times where we were away from the regular members, and there'll be times where we'll just let loose and joke and laugh. And it's like, at the time, it's like we got it, because there'll be a time where the joke's over and it's like, okay, back to cleaning. It was like being in jail. Like, okay, back to the block. That's literally how it was.
Yeah. It sounded like you had some authentic friendships in there, which is great. And that you were able to have those moments.
Well, I was just going to say too, like just listening to you and other podcasts before this, it certainly didn't steal your joy. Wouldn't you say? I mean, you've been able to.
Or you got your joy back.
You got your joy back. I don't know, because it seems like you can.
I definitely got my joy back.
Which is impressive.
Thank you. There wasn't a lot to be joyful about at the time, because it's like, although I left when I was 21, I was basically 15 mentally because there was still a lot of things I never did, a lot of things I didn't know. So it definitely took me a while and a lot of soul searching and freedom and trusting myself to get to where I am. But thank goodness I got there, because if I was still in the church, I can't even imagine what I'll be like. I would have been a hot mess.
I bet. And before we definitely want to hear how you got your joy back and how you've healed, but let's go back a little bit. What were some of if you can remember the first red flag or the first moment that you thought, something's not right, that maybe you overrode or you justified or you ignored? Like, obviously, the red flags now, but what were some of the things that you saw that you didn't understand then?
Yeah. So when I was 15, I was made to be an assistant, which is really senior in the church. So by the time I was, between the ages, I must have been around 17 when I started to think about marriage. As you do in cults, right? Because I kind of went up the hierarchy so young. By the time I was like 17, it was like, you need to find a husband. So between that time, because there would be, the UCKG is a revolving door. People leave, people come all the time. But I remember one incident in which there was a peer that basically she went down the ranks. So when I first joined the church, he was a leader. But by the time I became an assistant, which is one of the higher ranks, she was a regular member because she got demoted because she was quotation marks rebellious, as they always are apparently. So I remember there was a time where this leader, well, ex-leader, I think she did something that caused a lot of drama in the church. She stood up to a pastor. And I think she stood up to him, but good. And it was the word around the streets. Everyone was talking about it. I saw some of it because I believe it was in a meeting. And she laid into him and she stood her ground and she did not back down. And I just remember sitting there and I was like, inside it was like, yes, like, yeah. But then the dissonance, because you're trained not to ever be rebellious against the pastor. Like, you might as well be rebellious against God if you're going to be disrespectful to pastor. It has to be yes, pastor, no, pastor. You know, you're not even allowed to think badly about a pastor or about anyone senior in the church. So when that happened and that feeling, it sparked a little bit of inspiration. And I was like, wow, like, you can do that? You can, like, what? You can defend yourself to like, what? Like, my mind was kind of blown. So it was little things like that. And also in the UCKG, you mentioned in the beginning, you know, what were some of their ideologies? Again, on the theme of money, because that's pretty much their bread and butter. In the UCKG, they have this thing called the Campaign of Israel, in which twice a year you have to give like large financial offerings. And the whole premise is that they take a Bible verse, and a verse they used to love is the story of Abraham and Isaac. And they would say, you see, Abraham, and they used to lie. Rule number one, never trust a church that lies, especially about things that's in the Bible. So they would literally be like, oh, Abraham sacrificed his son Isaac. Well, he never did in the Bible. He never actually went through with it, but they ran with it. And they were like, Abraham sacrificed Isaac in order to get God's blessing. That's what you have to do. So, you know, what's Isaac in your life? Maybe your savings is Isaac. You know, maybe your salary is Isaac. Maybe that diamond ring you're wearing is your Isaac. If you want your blessing, you have to give up your Isaac.
Wow.
So basically, you have to give a large financial offering, clear out your savings, clear out your trust funds, sell your wedding ring, sell your tablet, sell your grandmother, just sell and give to the church, and you're going to be blessed. And that's what people do.
Wow.
And it happens twice a year, every year across the world. Okay, it's a global thing. And it's so insidious that it happens twice a year on specific.
Does the money go to Israel or does the money go to... Sorry, this is so...
Oh, no. It's
It was a joke, sorry.
Oh, okay.
That was a joke.
I thought as much.
Remember, this guy's a billionaire.
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering. I'm just pointing out the obvious.
You don't become a billionaire giving money away.
So how did you feel about, like, when did your red flags start to... Did you ever have a moment where you're like, I don't want to give my money? Like, or were you obedient to a point?
Ooh, I mean, it was the Campaign of Israel that really tipped the scales for me, because they were twice a year, every year around the same time. So they always do one around Christmas time and one around summer. So those 2 times of the year when people go away on holiday, when people splurge on Christmas, is when they do the Campaign of Israel, which is like super. I mean, when they would announce it and they would do these little promos, so you would know it's coming. You would have like a pit on your stomach because you would know that it's like paying taxes. You guys have to like do your own taxes. I should imagine that it's not fun and that you dread it. That's literally like the same thing. The feeling I had was like it was like a gut punch. It was like, oh man. So basically for the next month, I have to throw myself into involuntary poverty. I have to pretend to be poor. I have to live on ramen noodles.
Oh, man.
You know, I can't go anywhere nice. Like for the next month, I'm basically living on bread and water. Okay, great. Yeah. And at the same time,
You're in prison.
basically. And the other thing, it was mentally draining because in the UCKG, you always have to have a problem. They're fixated on problems. Like you always have to have a problem to be fighting against. And if you don't have a problem and your life is great, that's a problem, because they'll be like, you see, the devil's calm, the devil's not intimidated. So it's like you always have to make up some issue you're having, some problem. So it's like, oh damn, what is it? Okay, so let me think. I guess I don't talk to my aunt anymore, so I guess that's the issue that I need to sacrifice my Isaac for. Damn. You literally have to sit there scratching your head thinking of a vulnerability, because you have to give, you can't not give. So whenever these things would happen, I just hated it. I didn't see the need. It didn't make sense to me. And I remember one time, so I got married at 19. I don't know how much you want me to go into detail because that's a whole other thing. And I'm more than happy to share because a lot of people are interested in how on earth I got married at 19.
Well, we do want to know, but just to go back to what you just were talking about with having issues, we haven't talked about the exorcisms. Is that how they dealt with the issues?
The elephant in the room, the big controversies around UCKG is what they call strong prayers. It's an interesting term, which is basically exorcism. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can definitely tell you about that. So you're absolutely right. In the UCKG, they do something called strong prayers or prayers of deliverance. But they never mention exorcisms. But in essence, that's literally what they do. They cast out demons and they interview them, which is interesting. So in all essence and for all intents and purposes, it's an exorcism, but they never call it that. Now, even on their website, they deny that they do exorcisms, even though they do it 4 times a day on Fridays. So exorcisms now. So I was 13 when I first received one of these exorcisms. And they do it in any random service. Anytime, when you're preaching and you just have the urge to, talk to some demons or cast out a demon from a kid, those urges. So I suppose those urges used to happen a lot in my church because I was 13 years old. And I can't remember if it happened in a youth group or the designated exorcism services, which is on a Friday. But all I know is that I was minding my own business. I was told to close my eyes, put my hands on my heart, and think about my problem. Standard procedure in the UCKG. Oh, let me go back. Before you get to assuming the position of exorcisms, you are basically not interrogated, but the pastor or the assistant will come and sit down next to you and then will basically grill you about what problem you're facing. Okay. So they would sit down and say, so what problem are you facing? What do you want God to deliver you from? And then you would have to think, okay, what issues do I have? What issues do I, okay, so, I be liking boys sometimes. I be having, feelings. Oh, so lustful thoughts. Okay. God's going to deliver you tonight. So it's like, okay. So what they're doing is they're basically loading up their psychological gun and they know what button to push. They know your vulnerability at that point. So when you're told to close your eyes and put your hands on your heart, that's what they basically go for. So they would say, in the name of Jesus, the evil spirit that's causing this young girl to be lustful, manifest, show yourself, come out of her. And then you're like, what in the hell? Because this is new to me. I've never known anything like this. Like, I have a demon now? Well, damn, okay. I guess I am a bit lustful. So I guess I have a demon. So you kind of go along with it. And then they would say things like, the demon that's making her palms sweaty, you're making her heart beat faster. Yes, I know you're there. Come out. And then it's like, oh shit, like my heart's beating fast, my hands are clammy, it's happening. So then they like push your head back and push it to the side and you start to sway. And at the same time, they make the room super. And remember, this is a mass exorcism. So it's not just a one-on-one deal. It's happening all around you. Okay. And they make it super quiet. So they turn all the music off and make the place really eerie before this all happens. So whilst that was happening to me, I'm hearing people scream. I'm hearing chairs fly. I'm hearing like a battleground. And it's like, what is going on? And then afterwards, they sit you down and it's like, you see, so you manifested with demons tonight. And it's like, oh, shoot, okay. And then they're like, you have to come back on Friday and we're going to fight against this evil spirit. And then you go again. And then before you know it, you get into this routine of going on Fridays, purging your problems or your vulnerabilities, having the pastor or assistant pray for it and cast it out. But in terms of what they consisted of, it's really traumatic because it gets physical. And when I say physical, I mean violent. Because when you start to respond to the prayers, they put you in a headlock. Okay? They put you in a literal
Like
headlock.
a literal head cut? Like physically little head?
A literal head. You know them ones? How do I describe it? So they basically face you. So it's face to face. And then they clench their hands together and then put it over your neck so that your palms are basically on the back of the person's neck, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And they're holding you in, like bringing your head towards their chest kind of headlock. and then squeezing down on your forearms, on your neck. So that kind of weird headlock.
So they're physically abusive.
Physically abusive. And I left battered after Friday services because that's the thing. It's a learned thing and it's psychological. So you believe, because as humans, you know, we do things, we may have a lustful thought here and there. All of these normal things, they catastrophize and make it like, oh, that's a demon. So every time you be human, you feel as though you have to be delivered from this demon. So you go along with it. And then you're kind of like trained to go along with the flow. And if you did something really bad, like God forbid you slept with someone, then you know that you have to really put on a show. And then it gets to a point where, you know, you're in the headlock, they're saying, oh, God, send fire, burn the demon, fire, fire. What they like to do is this thing called interviewing the demon. So for an extra bit of pizzazz on the Friday services, what they will do is they will bring the person who's responding the most during the service up to the altar on the platform, if you will, or stage. And they put the microphone to the person's mouth and they're like, what are you causing in this person's life, demon? And then with you, because you know that you just had sex or you just had a glass of wine, God forbid, you know that you kind of have to go along with the flow because that's what other people do. So, and I did this many times, it would be like, I'm the demon that makes her lustful. And you have to like, it's so hard to describe, but I promise it made so much sense at the time. And those who've been through the process know exactly what I mean.
Totally get it. It's
crazy.
hard. It's hard to
get
go
it.
back there. But
you get it.
We totally get it.
It's crazy.
Obviously, this is something you didn't sign up for.
No, I didn't even know what the hell it was.
Okay, so there's abuse. You're working out there all the time. You're being isolated. You didn't say this, but I've heard you say in other interviews that you were definitely love bombed with getting your special assistant position that was really just more free labor.
Yeah.
Just to summarize.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that are...
And they shame you into having interviews with your demons.
And use groupthink to get...
Coercion.
Groupthink and coercion to get you to go along with abuse and just being human. Okay, so those are lots of things.
We've heard this before.
Yeah, we've heard it before.
And I didn't even mention the sleep deprivation.
Okay,
How could I forget the sleep deprivation?
Of course,
So there was a lot of psychological abuse.
For more context on what brought us here, check out my memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. I narrate the audio version, and it's also available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting this podcast.
Life moves quickly, and sometimes you just need to relax, recharge, or refocus without overcomplicating things. Even though we're on summer break, there's a lot to wrangle, book deadlines, podcast deadlines, and the kids' summer camp schedule that changes week to week. That's where Via comes in. We've both been trying their products for over a year now, and we love them. Whether it's for better sleep, boosting mood, calming anxiety, enjoying the forest, or just a little bit more, or just feeling more grounded, Via delivers. They've got gummies, drops, a range of options from zero to high cannabinoids so you can totally tailor your experience. Everything's organic, lab-tested, made in the U.S., and shipped discreetly right to your door. Not sure what to get? Their product finder quiz takes under a minute and gives personalized recs. If you're 21 or over, head to viahemp.com and use the code CULTY to receive 15% off, free shipping on orders of over $100. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code CULTY to checkout. That's VIIAHemp.com and use code CULTY at checkout. After your purchase, they'll ask where you heard of them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Let's be real. Work stress is everywhere right now. According to the data, 61% of the global workforce is dealing with higher than normal stress levels. That's not surprising, but it is a problem. And most of us can't just peace out and go off the grid, even if we want to. What we can do is take small steps, things that actually help. For me, that means moving my body, getting outside, and yes, therapy. I've found therapy super helpful in my own life. It's helped me make better decisions, manage stress, and understand myself on a deeper level. And I've seen what a game changer it's been for people I care about as well. That's why I think services like BetterHelp matter. It's the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 5 million people served. You can do sessions from your phone, your laptop, wherever. And if it's not a good fit, you can switch therapists anytime. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/culty. That's betterhelp.com/culty. Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
The unique thing that I forgot to mention is that they employed really huge scare tactics, because a lot of people will be watching and saying, well, why didn't you just leave? Well, the reason I didn't just leave is because I was kind of scared that I would die by leaving, because they would make an active effort to show you what would happen if you leave. So on a few occasions, I remember them having pictures of ex-members who used to be in the church who have somehow died. I mean, one took his own life and he was hanging from a tree, and they managed to get the image and showed it on the projector. There was another one who was a bishop in the church, who actually was a bishop in the UK, so we knew him. He left the church and was involved in a motorbike accident, and he was decapitated. They showed that image.
Oh.
So they would show these images and they would have whole services. So like over an hour, the pastor or bishop will be talking about how leaving the church is leaving the protection of God. When you're an assistant, when you go up the hierarchy, it's even harder to leave, because then it's, oh, you're an assistant, you casted out demons. If you leave, do you know that all of those demons that you casted out is waiting outside for you? That's what's outside of the church if you ever leave. So this was put onto us so regularly that the thought of leaving was vivid and it was real. Like, I felt as though if I left, I'm not only sacrificing my salvation, because they make leaving to be synonymous with basically neglecting your faith and like leaving Christianity, but I'm putting myself and my family at risk, because they would do, oh my God, the amount of services, the amount of hours I had with like fear mongering put into me is crazy. They make it like leaving will cause terrible things happen to you. And they would do this, especially when someone leaves. Whenever someone leaves, and people left all the time, they would have these emergency meetings in which all the assistants would have to participate in. And you'll be told for over an hour how leaving will cause not only bad things to happen to you, but to your family too.
Right. Of course.
So there was a lot of that psychological abuse. And this started from when I was 15 years old, even before that, really, because they start to teach it to you from being in the youth group. So that was my thought process. You know, I thought that leaving the church would cause bad things to happen.
We totally get it. And we're so glad that you eventually did. But what was the final straw? What was the thing that led up to, or some of the things that led up to you finally seeing the truth?
Yes. So the big thing, because, you know, when people leave a cult, it's rarely one, in my experience. And I've spoken to probably well over 2,000 survivors at this point from different cults, not just the UCKG. But from my understanding, it's never just one thing, as you guys probably know yourself.
Correct.
It's a build up. And then there's that one thing that kind of just like kicks you out the door. So my final straw was when I got married at the age of 19. So the UCKG is very, very conservative. They're very strict when it comes to marriage. You have to get the pastor's permission. You have to, of course, date inside of the UCKG. So in my mind, I did everything absolutely right. I dated my ex-husband for 3 months, because in the UCKG, you have 3 months to either marry or separate. So we decided to get married. And the UCKG is unique in the sense that they don't marry people legally. A lot of churches would apply for license so that they themselves can legally marry couples. But despite them having weddings every week, they don't have the license. I wonder why. Maybe it's because they have to be accountable. But yeah, so we had to get married in the registry office and then have the church wedding. It was about like 2 weeks later. So when we got married in the registry office now, that night we did what married people do, because in our mind, hey, we're married now. And before that point, we didn't have sex or anything like that because we didn't want to burn in hell. So that night, you know, we consummated our vows. So the very next morning, I was basically interrogated by my pastor's wife at the time. And from that first encounter, I knew that something was wrong, because her response was that I did something bad. But in my mind, it's like, we're married. What now? Like, we literally did everything we was meant to do. Mm-hmm. So then her husband called me and he interrogated me again. And then, he called back and said that I'd been summoned to Finsbury Park, which is basically where the headquarters of the UCKG is in the UK. And when you're summoned to the headquarters, it's basically like being called to the principal's office. You know something bad happened. You know you did something, you're going to get punished. So I was summoned. My husband was not. Shocker. So I was called to Finsbury Park. I went down there and I was brought into a room by the pastor who was in charge of the assistants. He's now a bishop. And he basically interrogated me. It was just me and him. I was 19 years old. He was a man, not middle age. I would say he must have been in maybe early 40s back then. And he was interrogating me, asking me what happened, why we didn't wait until our actual wedding, and that even though we're legally married under the eyes of God, we're not. So I committed a sin. And I'm basically going to be demoted. So I'm not going to be an assistant anymore. And I'm going to have to think about what I done. Now, that was gut-wrenching because when you're promoted to such a senior role within a cult, to lose that role is like a scarlet letter. So for me, that hit me like a ton of bricks. That was like the worst thing you could have done to me at that point. Because that was my identity. That was what I thought my calling was. I thought that I basically lost everything. But at the same time, it was annoying because it's like I did what they said. I didn't have sex with someone that wasn't my husband. We were married. So what's the problem? So that never sit right with me. So we got married 2 weeks later, and that's pretty much when I started to, now that I didn't have the uniform, I was able to kind of sit back and be like, what else ain't right? I suppose from that kind of resentment grew curiosity, like what else is there? And it's like the campaign of Israel again. Like in my mind, I started to quiet quit for sure. And then, after we got married, at the time, there was a really notorious pastor who was like notoriously abusive. Verbally, he was abusive. He was very narcissistical. So he made my decision to leave a lot easier because there was a lot of issues. Like, for example, my ex-husband gave security deposit to the church by the campaign of Israel and our rent for that month. So yeah, we got evicted. We got evicted from our place not long after marriage. And we were back. I was back at my mom's house living on a single bed with my husband, marriage bliss. And I was just like, what is this? What is this life? Where's all the prosperity that I was meant to be receiving? I'm a faithful tither. I was doing the work of God. Like, this ain't what I signed up for. I sunk into a depression. And it got to a point where I started to do my own little independent research, which is forbidden. And then I started to see that actually, this is false doctrine. Back then, I didn't have the language to call it a cult. I didn't have the language, the knowledge of it. But back then, I called it false doctrine. And in my mind, they were manipulating the Bible. That's what they were doing. They were making stuff up. And I no longer wanted to be a part of it. So I started to fall back. I stopped coming on Fridays. I stopped coming on Wednesdays. I only came on really Sundays towards the end. As you do, you quiet quit. And then I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I don't want to go ever. And I knew that I was going to lose everything because they, like most cults, they shun you and they teach shunning. So because I was so senior, that was even more reason for people to not talk to me when I leave because, I will really be used by the devil. So I knew all of this. I knew that I would lose my social life. I knew that I would lose my friends. I knew that my husband might divorce me because that was their ideology. That's probably one of the only reasons that they would agree with a divorce is if your spouse leaves the church. But I got to a point where it's like, yeah, I don't mind. I want to be outside. Not even outside like raving or partying. I don't want to do this anymore. I felt like I was suffocating. So I wrote up a text message. I sent it to the pastor. I sent it to my friends at the time. And I just said, look, I no longer agree with what the church does. I know you're going to cut me off, but I can't do it anymore. I'm never coming back.
Wow. Text message. Good for you. Did they try to get you to come back or did they let you leave and start shunning you?
So they basically went straight into shunning mode because they knew that because I was so senior, I've kind of like writ the book. So they didn't even try to get me to come back or guilt trip me. They knew that if I was to go and I was so senior, then yeah, I'm gone. So they pretty much just cut me off.
That makes sense.
That must have been hard, especially because that was your whole community and all your friends.
Exactly.
What did your husband do?
So my husband was really, really moody at first because he thought that I was going to morph into some kind of like crazed demon. as per their ideology. But because I was fairly chill and normal and I didn't like grow horns, he was cool. It took him a few months to adjust to me not going to church with him, but he got
He had
over
to
it.
make sure the horns didn't grow.
Exactly. But when he saw that I was cool, it was like, yeah, whatever.
Tell us about your healing journey. I know you've been out for how many years now?
I left 10 years ago now. I left when I was 21. So when I left, it was a major adjustment because suddenly I was on my own. I had to make my own decisions. I didn't know what I was going to do next Friday. Whereas in the cult, my whole life was mapped out. I knew what I was doing on Mondays. I knew Wednesdays. Everything was kind of predestined. So it took me a minute. I felt like a fish out of water. I was basically 15 years old again, rediscovering things basically by myself. But I got used to it. I started to get into work and I moved on. And it wasn't until lockdown by lockdown, I had a son who was 2. So we had a son. And during lockdown is when the cracks really started to appear in my marriage, and it became evident that, yeah, I don't want to be married to this guy because we had no business getting married. We were complete different people. So by lockdown, it's run its course and I separated. And suddenly I was like, well, now I can talk about it publicly because previously he was still afraid of the cult, even though he left a few years prior to. But he refused to ever talk about it, let alone name it a cult or anything like that. So when we separated, I spoke to a friend who also used to attend, and I'm like, why don't we go live on Insta one day? Why don't we talk about this on Instagram? Which we did. And then the floodgates opened and other people started to reach out and be like, I had no idea you was going through it. I went through the same thing. That's why I left. I got messages from people still in there. And then I decided to basically give it its own platform. So I created Surviving Universal UK, its Instagram page, TikTok. We went viral a bunch of times. And that's when I started to really look at getting some documentation, some investigations going, because until that point, there was absolutely no insider investigations of ex-members in the UK speaking out. So I was really keen to kind of fill that space and get something out there, which I did.
Good for you.
Thank you.
That's very impressive and great that your husband got out also. Nippy asked a question earlier. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, I just want to know in your advocacy, what obstacles you faced and how the systems that are hypothetically designed to protect the victim actually protect the perpetrator. Have you run into that?
Yes, that's a good question. So about, I would say 2 years ago now is when I first decided to talk to the police about my experiences. And there was ample kind of crimes that were committed. I was physically abused when I was young. I was coerced. There were financially exploited, child labor. It's evident that there were a lot of crimes that were committed. But because they wasn't done in a domestic setting, the UK currently has zero legislation that can address this kind of abuse. It would if I was in a domestic setting. But because being abused in a church doesn't come under that narrow definition of coercive control in the UK, there's nothing the police could have done. So I was literally told that although I was the victim of crime, because the current legislation only recognizes coercive control in domestic settings, there's nothing they could do. So that's pretty much the silver bullet that can hold cult abusers to account, because I think all cults have that in common. The leaders coercively control their members. So that would be the silver bullet. But as of yet, the law hasn't caught up. But I am advocating and part of the leading kind of campaign group to have that amendment in legislation. And I'm also a law student. Final year, by the way. So yay me.
Yay.
Good for you.
Congratulations.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's great.
So you didn't have to study for your finals after all, because look at you now.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me just hearing your energy and your spirit and all that stuff. I think it's probably a big vehicle for you and what you're doing. So
Thank you.
success story for me.
Yes, definitely a success story. And just curious, was it during lockdown, or when did you make the cult connection versus just something that was bad and you didn't want to, and what was the word you used? False doctrine. It wasn't just false doctrine, it was also a cult. When did you figure that out?
So interestingly, I was watching a documentary, and this was way before lockdown. So I was watching a documentary about Scientology. And it was about who did it? I think it was, what was her name? Leah
Remini.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she had that amazing documentary. And whilst I was watching that, I was glued. And then for the first time, those dots connected. And it's like, but that happened to me. But I did that. And then for the first time, it was like a cult. I was in a cult.
Wow.
Like, for the first time, I had that language, and it was like, it made everything make sense. It was so validating that other people went through similar things, and there's a name for it. So for the first time, I had a name for it, which was great.
Amazing. You know, Nippy and I just met Leah Remini 2 weeks ago in person
Oh,
and got to tell her what a hero she was. And next time I talk to her, I'll tell her that you're reaching people in the UK too.
please do, and tell her
Again.
that,
Yeah.
and tell her that I'm really good friends with Apostate Alex, who's
Oh, yes.
championing.
Oh,
Yeah, so
We know him.
we've been working very closely together. You know, he's
That's
amazing.
awesome. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm supporting them, and they support us. You know, we're in this together here in the UK. We're trying to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Yes. And you should also connect, if you're not already, with Laura Richards from Crime Analyst, because she's British and
Ah,
she's been a part of that legislature, I believe, in regards to coercive control that does exist. But she's somebody else who you should definitely connect with. She's been on our podcast. Check those out.
oh, awesome! If you can connect us, I would
Yes.
love that. If she's down to meet me, please do.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I think it's great what you're doing with your advocacy, Surviving Universal.
Yeah, I feel proud of you.
Yeah. Really
Thank
proud
you
of you.
guys.
Yeah, this could have
Thank
gone a lot. It
you.
could have gone a lot of ways. You
Yeah.
know, and I think you've been able to turn a negative into a positive. So good for you.
Thank you so much.
What do you think the key was in your healing?
She made it rain.
Yeah.
Dad,
Yeah, apart from that, you know, you have to find something to channel this energy into, or
Yes.
you sink or swim.
Right.
And if you don't find something creative or just something to channel it into, you can fall into a deep depression. You can fall into addiction. You know, you're so much more susceptible to these issues that get you when you're vulnerable, because you have all these questions and you feel this darkness and you feel marginalized. It can put you in a really dark place, and it does. So I basically had to swim, and my kind of healing came when I started to talk out, because I got my power back and I was able to reclaim the narrative and talk my truth and stand up and fight for once, you know. And not only that, to do it for others, because I can't get those 7 years back, but I can help someone else to keep their 7 years, you know, to
Yeah.
avoid what
Yeah,
I
well
went
put.
through. So doing all of this has been incredibly healing for me. And yeah, I need this movement as much as the movement needs the world. So yeah, I mean, it all just worked out so brilliantly, and it was never planned. You know, when I first went live that day, I didn't plan that all of this would happen. The BBC panorama, being forced to get, I had no idea. But here we are, and I'm not mad at it.
That's great.
Thank you.
You know, we're writing a book together, Nippy and I, about all the things we've learned since doing this podcast. And we're ending it on a chapter called Survivors to Thrivers. And we're talking about the survivors and all the things they've done. Instead of joining another cult and jumping into that, jumping into something that can be healing and helpful. And
yes.
I think we'll include your story in the advocacy section.
Oh, that's a real privilege. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
Any other final advice you want to offer people who might want to escape a cultish environment?
Yes, I would say listen to your instincts, because they're not wrong. Cults teach that you should not trust yourself. You should not trust your instincts. You should not trust your loved ones. You should basically be skeptical about everything but them. Trust your instincts, because it's there to protect you. And don't worry about, oh, I told you so, or don't worry about any of that. That's all noise. If you want freedom, you have to get your freedom. It's not just going to happen. You're not going to wake up one day and not be in that situation. You have to go ahead and rip off that Band-Aid.
Great advice. Okay, final question. This is a fun one. What's the one thing that you do now that you weren't allowed to do when you were in the church that's sort of a guilty pleasure that you get to enjoy now?
Oh, I get to listen to music with swear words in it now.
Fuck yeah.
All right.
That wasn't allowed before. Even gospel songs, some of them was outlawed. So yeah, now I can listen to whatever I want. I can watch naughty movies. I'm a big fan of P-Valley, by the way. That would have been completely contraband. But yeah, I can watch what I want, listen to what I want. It's great.
Amazing. Oh, Rachel, such a pleasure to connect with you. And good luck with the rest of your degree and being a mom
Thank
and all the
you.
things.
Thank you so much. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Rachel.
it. And thank you guys for building up this platform for people like me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Of
for
course, let's
saying
get the
that.
word out there.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
If you like the show, please consider supporting us by giving us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Cults are commonplace now, and we're looking at them all, and every little bit helps. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.
Well, that was just a delight. I find Rachael to be so positive and truly an inspiration for all of us survivors.
Yeah, love her energy.
Check out the BBC documentary that they did on the UCKG and follow her on socials to see what she's up to in her advocacy.
We'll drop the link to the website in the show notes.
Till next time, be safe, don't join a cult, and
No exorcisms.
no exorcisms.
They're not real.
Pre-order our book. Fair?
Yeah. Ish.
You don't have to. It's there if you want it.
Yeah. Only if you just want mad knowledge.
Actually, seriously, we hope you never need it. But if you do, you know where to find
You know
us.
someone who does.
See you next time.
Bye.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with Amphibian Media. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy, audio engineering by Red Cayman Studios, and our writing and research is done by Emma Deal and Kristen Reeder. Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslin.